This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with ʌltrə or ʌltrə. And I'd like to thank you for showing up on the show today. And it's always great to talk to musicians. We started with talking to musicians back in 2016. This is actually episode 908 of the Phantom Electric Ghost program. We've been on the air since 2016 on Apple Podcast. So we're getting close to our 1,000th episode, but we're happy to have you on the program today. We do have a cool video from your first album that we're going to get into. But just to introduce yourself to the audience, maybe give a brief background for maybe just an intro.
Yeah, of course. Hi, it's really good to be here. Thank you for the invitation, first of all. And this is ʌltrə, and I'm producing solo my music. And this is called ʌltrə or ʌltrə in German. I'm coming from Germany. And what I like about my project is it's not only just music, or how you would call it. And it's also, for example, video. So it's a combination of different art fields, maybe. And this is what I really appreciate about my project, because it's so diverse. I just like to work in different areas. I'm a designer, and this is something, I just like that it's a full project now.
Yeah, it's always cool to do like an expansive or multimedia type of project. You know, a lot of stuff I do with the Phantom Electric Ghost is very visual. I like to do cross genre, and what I call my music, I call it expansive. So I like to be able to pull from everything. And the interesting thing is, like, when I got into music, I was really into craft work, and I'm into like Brian Eno, but David Bowie, Brian Eno, yes, Pink Floyd. I'm very much into the progressive side of electronic music, and I'm a keyboardist, so I kind of have always been into very experimental music, and your music to me approaches that zone. So I'm going to cue up your video, and this is from your first album, and it's called Escal, right? Is the song?
Escal. Yeah.
So what? Yeah, we're going to actually play the whole thing.
Great.
And then we'll actually put you on mute, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So if you're ready, I'm going to kick this off, and then we'll talk about it after the video, okay?
Eskalation. Verstärkter Einsatz, eine Verschärfung, eine Ausweitung, eine Steigerung, eine durch Wechselwirkung generierte Vergrößerung militärischer Mittel aufgrund der Tatsache, dass die Beteiligten in ihren Maßnahmen rigoroser werden. Verschärfung, eine Ausweitung, eine Steigerung. Eskalation, Eskalation.
So that was the first video, and we're back. So yeah, that's really interesting. It kind of has like a Last Supper and very experimental work. I love that kind of beat. It's kind of like the techno kind of I don't know, new wave, synth wave, and I'm very much into that kind of thing. But maybe you can talk about the song itself and the video. I don't know if you want to talk about the construction of the song first,
Yeah.
or video.
I think you're going to start to talk a little bit about the song itself. I was producing it when I was in rehab after a nearly fatal car accident in 2020. And my back was broken 3 times, my hand was broken as well, and my colon was perforated. So a lot of surgeries, and I was quite a long time on intensive care, and later on in this rehab, and where I got taught how to walk again without this rollator or
wheelchair.
Yeah, this really high ones. I was working on these things, and during the time, my family at some point gave me my computer, and somehow I used the music to come back to life, and it was helping me to feel kind of normal again. So that was really helping me. And for this specific song, I did this video, and it's until now my most elaborated music video. And even though it was with phone and shot with phone and without any budget, just for the food, I had to buy the food, yes. And it actually won prizes as best music video, the Afterlife Film Festival, and got nominated and also reached finals in short film festivals around the world. So this is making me quite proud, must say. And maybe a bit more about the video itself. For me, it's like a still life, a moving still life, even though it's a controversy, but somehow the aesthetic, it's for me something like that. And it's a picture of opulence and decadence, and an escalation of a human being, if you want to say it like that, from everything too much. It's too much food and too much color, too much lust, everything too much somehow. And the consumption without questioning and coming out of the mouth, and influenced.
I was saying it has that decadent kind of a decadent, opulent, yeah, excess kind of vibe that you have this like, you know, no control,
Yes.
that and it has like, and you could some people could say, oh, it had like a Last Supper, but it's kind of like a decadent Last Supper. But it's interesting. I
Yeah.
love the music behind it because I'm an electronic musician myself, so I've always channeled that kind of craft work, Brian progressive, new wave era was I'm a child of the '70s, and I grew up
Mm.
with like Joy Division, New Order, that type of sound right when it started, when it's kind of post punk
Yeah, in this
period.
very beginning. That's cool, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I was always very much into it. I'm very into much like Moog and Roland and synthesizers and Yamaha DX7s and D50s and you know mini Moogs and the
Yes.
modulars. And just
Yeah.
experimenting with that type of stuff, and it was all just the idea of playing with the sound, hours and hours of just developing the sounds and doing in your style is like you use a lot of like kind of gloomy, distorted synths with basses and rhythmic sounds that's kind of like in that pattern, using sequencers and alternative rhythms or polyrhythms or different things.
Mm.
So maybe, yeah, like your inspiration, are you like, if you maybe could name some of the people that inspired you to do this type of music?
Yeah, this type of music, it's first of all maybe inspired by my brother's music. He's also did music and with his band Shava Sadhana. And
Hmm.
but when you want to see maybe the genre, why I chose this genre, it's just yeah, catching me. And the first song I've ever heard about in this genre was from actually Kiev, a German band, and it was
Hmm.
Blutrausch zum Feierabend or Feierabend in Kiev. It's a blood rush in after work, if I want to translate it. And it was so touching
Hmm.
me. It's this beats, and I just wanted to dance if I was hearing it the first time, and then was popping up. Okay, at some point, would really like to do something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of channels a little Trent Reznor kind of Nine Inch Nails in Downward Spiral kind of vibe too. But a lot of people found I think we're inspired by German bands like Kraftwerk,
Mm.
and just the whole Berlin scene has always been very inspiring. Even Prince was inspired by Kraftwerk. So a
Yes.
lot of German music has inspired electronic music overall just because of the approach. Um, and I hear a little Tangerine Dream, kind of sometimes you just hear a lot of interesting things. Even Yellow Music Orchestra, if you think about like electronic music, is like where people get some of the ideas, the 16 8-bit type of music. Um, so and then the visuals. So you're a lot of your work, is it always like the way the video we just showed? Do you have videos to go with each song when you
Not,
can?
yeah, not to each song, as it's really a lot of work to do this video. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's time consuming, and it is a focus on music. And this video is an extra to my music to
Hmm.
visualize it. I think it's underlining it in a good way. But already producing the sounds or the songs takes a lot of time, even though I'm doing everything digital. So I'm working, or I was starting with a garage band, and because I wanted to have something quick and yeah, a quick result
Hmm.
that was needed during that time. And yeah, nowadays I'm working with Logic Pro, and yeah, it's yeah. Even though I want a quick result, it takes forever to have a song ready until I'm really satisfied with it.
Yeah,
So
the songwriting process to you, like different people, depending on what they do, they do a very like elaborate construction kind of from the bars or from the grid. Like if you're
yes.
doing like a DAW type of production, you're trying to construct it, and you're very deliberate about what you want. Or is it kind of like a stream of consciousness? Do you have an idea what you want to do, as a songwriter before you go into the DAW, or do you kind of
No.
find it as you're working? Is it kind of like a stream of consciousness and say, "Oh, this is a happy accident, and I'll go with this because this actually is like maybe I had an intention," and then you're playing with all the
Yes.
settings, and then you find something, and you're like, "Oh, maybe I'll go with this."
Mhm. Yeah, it's exactly what you say. I don't really have a concept when I'm starting a new song. It's just maybe a beat I have in mind, just like a boop, boop, boop. Then I go to the computer and find my synthesizers I like, manipulate them to dark distortion and until I can call it my own. So and with this,
Yeah.
then I starting off, yeah, the song. So really without concept. And when you, for example, look at my origins of ʌltrə, it was yeah. On the one hand, I always wanted to do electronic music. On the other hand, I never had this initial spark, or how you would call it. And then it was during a period of mourning over the loss of my brother. He died unexpectedly in 2016. And yeah, it was during his birthday in 2019. There was a really deep grief, and I didn't know really what to do with me. And yeah, what I did is I took my cello, and then I was bowing just the C string. I mean, it's the C string is really vibrating a lot, and
Mhm.
somehow this vibrations went in my body, and it was calming me a little bit down. And then I just recorded it, went to my e-piano, added some other sounds, and it was so fast. I didn't plan anything. I just put everything on a computer, added more sounds to it, and yeah, the song just went out of it. And this specific song, I also took to Iceland, where we once spread my brother's ashes, and I was playing it for him there, and
Wow.
because I did it for him, yeah. And that was, I think he liked it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's
so.
interesting, like, it seems like a crucible moment sometimes gets people to go into art. I got into art kind of full bore. I had gone through a level 3 cancer, a sarcoma, and
Yes.
then I decided I wanted to express all these things that were inside, and, it took me, like, a lot of years to decide to actually use my voice. I was a synthesist with not doing any vocals for years and years and years, and then suddenly I decided, "Oh, I should do vocals. I should actually
Mhm.
write lyrics." And a lot of my music was like, soundscapes or sound paintings without any lyrics at all. And I was inspired by, Yellow Magic Orchestra and Yes and, Sun Ra and people like that. And I was like, "Well, yeah, I don't need to sing." And then I eventually decided, well, yeah, I wanna take some poetry and to actually turn it into music. So yeah, there's all kinds of approaches with electronic music where you can go do 20-minute pieces that are more like classical or new wave without any lyrics at all. Or you can start to explore like, oh, I do want to play with words. So
Mhm.
in your music, are you primarily interested in the kind of sound painting, soundscape, like that type of vibe, or do you think you would ever incorporate lyrics?
Um, what I'm doing is here and there, not in each song, adding my own voice. So I'm just speaking into the
Mm,
microphone
spoken
and
word.
also delay this and distort my voice most of the time. And then it's becoming something, yeah, more than having this soundscapes.
Hmm.
And but it's also depending on the song. As I said before, I'm not really planning anything. So if
Yeah.
I have something, and then at some point I'm thinking, okay, maybe this could be nice to it, or I need a poem. I'm just yeah, speaking
Yeah.
out loud a poem, like the last song in my debut album was something I just had to do it somehow. It's yeah, just coming.
Yeah, well, I grew up listening to like Lou Reed and Bob Dylan, And the idea of taking like spoken word or poetry and incorporating it into music, Lou Reed was, with the Velvet Underground, it's a really good example of
Mm.
like he doesn't really sing, he's a poet. And then he would put and if you listen to, like, jazz like Sun Ra, the American jazz band from the '50s, they would just take lines like Coltrane and, like, a Love Supreme, and they just have, like, a line and just repeat it. Like, the idea, like, in
Mm.
Sun Ra, they're like, "Space is the place." And that's a famous, like, jazz piece where they just have one line, and they say, well, like, "Space is the place," and it just is embedded in the song as, like, a chant. And I always say, "Well, that's really interesting if you take spoken word," and it is kinda like it's a moment in time kinda stream of consciousness style of writing. Like you said, like you get on into your recording studio, and sometimes I just go hit my multi-track and just start playing. And I know, go back and listen to the tape and say, "Oh yeah, this works. This doesn't work." Or I'll just leave it the way it is and say, "Hey, this was a point in time thing. I like it. I'll actually put it out," because you never know. You listen to what you do, and I just think it's interesting the way you create music things is like every song kind of it serves whatever the song is. Like at the moment, you could be very intricate, have a lot of ideas really planned out, or it could be this total stream of consciousness, moment in time, point in time, and you can't really you don't know it is kind of what it is. Like you listen to the muse or the idea that the universe gives you something, and if you're a musician, I think you kind of channel it, right? You open up your head, your trust your instincts to kind of go with the moment and do what you feel is right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is quite a new channel for me to somehow also deal with my emotions. And as I said before, as a designer, I'm already having a lot how I can just come out of me. But music was in 2019, really the first time I'm doing it, and yeah, since now I'm doing it, and I really like it. And when I go for a walk, for example, I'm catching up inspiration. It can be a tree in with the shadow play, and yeah, this is also giving me just ideas, not just for visual design, but also for music. Then it's a yeah, like a word or something. Then I'm speaking it in my cell phone just to remember, and then I go back to the computer
Like a voice
and I'm
memo.
starting off a
Yeah,
new
you do
song.
like a
So
voice.
yes.
Yeah, voice memo. Like I do walks in the woods. I like to hike. I live in New Hampshire, and there's tons of these pines, like these big pine tree woods, and you go
Yes.
like on a river trail. And sometimes I'll actually record the sound of the river
Mm.
or the sound of the forest. And I was kind of like, well, back in the day, bands like Yes and Genesis would do field recordings, or like Pink
Yeah.
Floyd. They go out and do a field recording, and maybe just somebody talking, or the woods, or traffic, or breaking a glass, or taking a brick and hitting against the wall. Then you start like what happens with it's interesting with being a creative. It's very cathartic. I find that like doing art, whether it's photography or poetry or visual stuff or music, I use it like the way what your story with your brothers, like a lot music is another tool when you're an artist that you can work through your emotions. You can work through pain or joy or whatever, and it can gives you a way, an outlet to express something. And it's like,
Exactly.
therapy. It's like going to a therapist, you know, sitting on the
Yes.
piano. To me, it's like therapy for me, and I'm on my piano. It's like it's better than a lot of things for me.
Yeah, actually, when I had this with my hand and I couldn't really move it anymore, and I didn't know if I can use my hand um, after that accident, also for drawing and everything. So even though it was packed in this white thing, I was
Mhm.
trying to play the piano just to exercise. So just with one finger,
Yeah. Well,
it's really good therapy.
you can find, like you were saying when you were playing, like, your cello, I think you mentioned that you just hit the one note, and that's very cool because it's experimental. Like, I've heard of experimental musicians, like, go and, like, open the piano and then throw a metal bar on the strings and then put mics on it and record it.
Yes.
Or just kinda like Brian Eno, when he was working with Bowie, he would go up to the chalkboard and just randomly put down chord progressions and notes, and until the musicians in the studio would just put these notes together, and the musicians was like, "Well, that doesn't work," and he would say, "Well, it doesn't matter if that is musical. I just want you to do this," because he was very experimental. He's like, it didn't matter if it was actually scale correct or in the right you know tone. He is, I want you to try something different. And I
Yes.
always was very much into the idea, like experimental music. If you're expansive and you don't close your mind, you can try things that people didn't do. Come up with polyrhythms or alternate tunings, or something that's not totally perfect. Some people, they'll try to get into it and like, well, they want to, you want to optimize the rhythm and make sure it's totally on the beat. And other people say, what's wrong? What's wrong with doing something a little off time or a little like distorted or dissonant? You use synthesizers, you can actually start to explore noise, like pink noise, blue noise, white noise, brown noise. You can start to explore different types of modulation. So, I'm being a synthesist, I do a lot of sound design. I get into subtractive synthesis or additive synthesis or granular synthesis, and I play with what those things do from a kind of a synth theory point of view. But it's art. It's art and science, like at the same time, figuring out what to do with the waveforms. And once you
Yes.
realize what certain things, like if an LFO, how it affects like a sine wave, or how you run something through a ladder filter versus a different type of filter. If you're
Yeah.
using, multi-mode filters versus ladder filters versus, you know, all different band pass filter, like versus like a low pass filter. And you run the same sound and you're like, oh wow, look at the result. If I
Mhm.
play with this ladder versus this band pass, if I run it through an LFO, I use a random voltage generator. What do I get? And in terms of my music, I like to use a lot of analog sequencers to trigger things. Like even take a sample and use the rhythm of the sample to trigger a drum machine. So you just take a
It's
sample
really
and you take
like a big
yeah,
playground. This yeah, experimental music, and this is also what I like about it. I'm not really a technical person. I'm just doing what I think is nice in the end. So I'm just putting another filter to it and just play around with this buttons. And at some point, it's just my sound I want. So
is what
yeah.
yeah, is what you hear is what you get. When you think about like like the WYSIWYG idea, like what you hear is what you get when you start playing with synthesis. And it's like, well, there's no correct way. I was looking at there's some famous, like Victor Wooten is a famous bass player, and he was having a class, like a master class, and he was saying there's no wrong note. I can run
Mhm.
this rhythm in any scale, and you could say that's wrong, but I can make it work. So he was showing like people in this session where he could go through all the scales using the same rhythm, multiple scales and crossing scales, and say there's no wrong note. It's your attitude. It's what you're bringing
Yes.
to it as a musician. It's like you don't have to be so focused on the notes. You can kind of go into different ways. So I think it's interesting how you can approach something. You might not be technically a musician, but you get a lot of producers today that weren't trained as musicians, and they can come in and they can go into a DAW, get into a CDJ, and create music and get like hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, to listen to them. And it didn't go to a music school. They don't have music theory, but they have an ear for it. They can do it. I've seen like
Yes.
black musicians in the U.S. Blues guys can't read. Some of the jazz
Yeah.
guys can't
True.
read
Yeah.
music, and they
Yeah.
can produce like amazing work. And you're like, well, they didn't learn any theory. They just kind of did it because they
Mhm.
felt it.
Yes, yeah, they felt it exactly, and I think having the ear and just having creativity, I think this is more or less enough to do your own music. Just feeling it and doing it. The rest is coming by itself. I mean, it's helping if you
Mhm.
can read notes and so on, but it's not necessary.
But it's interesting to me how you talked about like you used the piano and you used your cello and you brought it into the DAW. Do you like to take acoustic instruments and then use an audio interface and bring it into your DAW, or just use like I guess it's kind of point in time. Like if you felt like taking an acoustic instrument and bringing it into your DAW, you just do it because that serves the song.
Yes, exactly. It's just coming how it comes. So again, not planned what I'm doing. And for the second album, what is coming out soon, for example, I just wrote a piece for the piano. First time. It was just something what was coming up at that time, and yeah. So I don't have to record always my instruments. It can also just start with sitting in front of the computer and starting with finding a nice sound and manipulate it.
How much time do you spend on like rhythm? I've talked to a lot of musicians that will say, I start with the drums first. I've talked to I've had like 300 interviews with musicians, and a lot of them will start with the rhythm before
Mhm.
they touch any other instrument. And then you have other people who say, well, no, I start with like an acoustic guitar, or I start with the piano, or I start with the sample. Um, and again, it's probably like whatever serves the song, right? Or do you focus like on rhythm because some people feel like that's the foundational in music?
Even that, I don't really have a preference. If it's a melody in my mind, so I'm starting off with a melody, and if it's like a pressing beat, what is pumping in me, and then it's that I'm starting
Hmm.
off with. So.
Yeah, I find it's like, I might start like, I've got a lot of Moogs and they're famous for like bass sounds, like the Moog synthesizers. And I might just start with a Moog sequence
Mhm.
and then go find whatever drum I want to use. Like even if it's like my synth, like a Roland, and open up a drum set and have all 61 keys represent a percussive thing, and then manually play that against the bass line, until I get it to be right. So then I might do a lot of, you know, overdubs or keep on doing it because I'm kind of like a guy. I like to do it live. So a lot of my stuff is I'll just go and put something in a live multi-track without a DAW. And then later I've been using like an Akai Force, like an MPC as my DAW, but really I use it as a sequencer. And then I
Mhm.
kind of put things over it. I'll grab samples, I'll grab loops, I'll grab CV stuff, and just start to manually manipulate it to kind of do polyrhythms or whatever I feel like. And I don't really look at the grid as much as I listen to what it sounds like until I get it to be what I want it to be. I don't want, I like to have the computer tell me I should do with the BPM. I kind of just listen till I get it where I want it to be. And, it's just a choice because a lot of people are so, one of the things I noticed with music today is there's a lot of like perfection. There's a lot of people that spend a lot of time trying to get the BPM, trying to get the keys right, not wanting to have the happy accidents. But when I listen to your music, you're using a DAW, but you have a lot of interesting kind of free form sound, which I think is really cool because it's kind of like the old style of recording. I started with like multi tracks with no computer control at all. So you just had to put it in, each track, overdub, put them down. And there was no computer assistance, no metronome, nothing. You just had to get it right. And it sounds like your music is really freeform.
Yeah, it is. On the one hand, on the other hand, for me, it is going into perfection until I think this song is good now. But it's just for me. So I need it sound like I want,
Yeah, it's your
and
point of view.
it doesn't really have something to do with the beat must be exactly on this position, or yeah, the BPM must be something like that for being danceable. It's just a perfection for myself. So
It's what you have the vision for your song. Like you're not letting like some people will let the computer kind of like with AI today. AI could come in and you could say I want something that sounds like this song, and it'll
mhm.
give you the template, and you'll be in this template, and you're kind of locked into the template. right? So I wanted to sound like this song that was already done, and it will actually kind of map out the structure, and then you kind of live with that structure. But like if you have your own vision, right, you're gonna go with what you feel is like perfect for you. Like what I heard you say is like, I'm gonna go for what I want it to sound like, So that's my own personal stamp on my music, because that's why you're doing music, because you want to express yourself as an
Exactly.
individual, right?
Yeah.
You're not necessarily comparing yourself to whatever is going on. You have your own vision for your music, and
Yes.
it's going to be what you feel is correct for that particular song, right?
Yeah, exactly. And also this can always change. If I'm doing now rhythm noise, it can also be a piece going into harsh noise or whatever is coming. So I'm not so fixed into something. And this is also why I couldn't just ask for, okay, I want this and that, and then I'm preparing my stuff to it. That is not the way I could work with music, and also not what I want out of music, as it's a helper for myself doing music. So
Yeah, it's like therapeutic. It's
yes,
therapeutic. Well, maybe some people, maybe it's therapeutic to go be like doing like a Pink Floyd cover and doing it note for note like Pink Floyd. And that
yes,
might be like, okay, that makes you happy because you can match them. But, when I started music, it was like, why not combine a Pink Floyd aesthetic with a punk aesthetic? So, okay, I like punk bands like The Clash, Husker Du, Black Flag. I like that kind of Nine Inch. I like that punk aesthetic because I like the idea that you don't have to be perfect, but you can be very expressive and honest. Kind of if
yes,
you think about like Nirvana, like Kurt Cobain in Nirvana, he's very honest. Wasn't trying to have perfect pitch, was expressing himself in a very honest way. It's exactly what he felt. Okay? And the punk aesthetic, even listen to the Clash. It's like, Joe Strummer. It's like they just saying what they felt was important, right? And it didn't have to be perfect, but it was very, you know, present. And even like the Who, a lot of people say, well, they're kind of like the first punks because they would just go at it, and everybody was an individual. Like within the band, the Who, everybody was kind of playing their own thing. They weren't trying to connect in time. They were like all going solo and all at once. And I was like, wow,
yeah,
that's kind of cool to have that kind of chaos. And sometimes they don't, if you listen to jazz, it'll go off in a very chaotic way and it'll come back. And it'll go off, it'll
yes,
come back. And it's kind of very free form. And I've very much been into a kind of fusion, progressive rock, experimental music, punk aesthetic, and just one day it might be very much like the Clash, the next day it might sound like more like Pink Floyd, or in the same song, it might have movements that are all over the map, where it sounds like white light, white noise, total noise, total disruption, and then go into a theme and then come out of it and come back. It's like, but what you felt like at the moment. And so you
yeah,
don't have no idea, like, you try to pin you down, it's like, are you are you EDM? Are you trap? Are you trance? And it's hard to if you're a musician, which I think what I hear, it would be hard to say, "Oh, you're trap or you're bass dub, or you're this, that." How are you gonna put yourself in that box if, like, every piece is wildly different? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm kind of a big promoter, it's like, why not have a very expansive sound palette?
yeah. I think it's good to really pick from everywhere, from different genres, and experimenting a lot. And this is something what is music for me about. Nevertheless, what I'm doing right now in terms of genre is yeah, power noise or rhythmic noise. And this is something I just feel at the moment. And when I go, for example, to collaborate with other artists, what I already did, it can also change a little bit. So it depends. And also for the future, I don't know what genre I would fit in at that very moment. So
But I think that's the great thing about being experimental. From the beginning, what I said is I came up with this idea of expansive because people wanted to pin me down and say, "Oh, are you a DJ? Are you this? Are you that?" Say, "No, I do expansive." And say, "What's that?" Well,
Mm.
it's cross genre. Expansive means that I can go and do anything I want. And so
Yes.
then people are like, "Well, how am I supposed to sell that?" You get an ARR, it's like, "Well, how am I supposed to sell that? What's that?" I said, "Well, it means I'm an experimental musician that crosses multiple genres, if you wanna know
Mm.
what it means." I gave them an example, and then they go, "Oh, okay, I get it." But, yeah, some people don't like that because they wanna put you in all your techno, your EDM, your trance, your trap, your big beat, and then maybe one of my songs is trance, but another song's techno, another one's punk, another one's new wave, another one's rock,
Yeah.
another one's classical. It's like, "Whoa," you're all over the place, but, a band like Pink Floyd, that's what they were doing.
Mm.
Yes, that's what they were doing. Genesis, that's what they were doing. Sometimes they'd have a pop hit, other times they have a song that's 20 minutes long, you know?
Yes.
So, like, so what's wrong with that? If you go and
Mm.
play live, I've always said, like, just because you don't have a hit doesn't mean you can't be successful. Because you go to play live, you're gonna get an audience that says, "Wow, I like this person because 'cause they're interesting." You think about the Velvet Underground and Andy Warhol. They used to have these shows where Andy Warhol would have all this art in the room where the Velvet Underground was actually playing. So Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground are playing music, and then Andy Warhol had actors, painters, photographers, models, and video running in the background all
Yeah.
around it. It was like a happening, and I was like,
Yeah, I think
That's
something like that.
cool."
Yeah, it's just fantastic how the different art things just grab together and creating something new and special. I think that is really fun.
Yeah, Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa was famous. He used to do the same thing. Like Zappa and the Mothers of Invention in the late 60s and 70s, they had like Andy Warhol like happenings. They'd have all these types of artists all around them. Performance artists, visual artists, models, all around while they were doing their music. And I really think, you can see this sometimes in festivals that you'll get bands that will do that or different scenes like in a modular experimental music scene. They'll have people put screens up. It'll have actors and models go on stage and like act out like one act plays while they're doing music. But like, I think it's really cool to have no boundary to say like I don't know where I'm going to be. If you follow me as an artist, you'll see where I'm going.
Mhm.
You'll get fans, you'll lose fans. It's like that's where you are. Um, So it seems like to me, like, have you got any kind of plans for doing like live shows? I know because of COVID, it's hard, but are you primarily doing work, on record, or are you going to bring some of this to like a live audience?
Actually, yes, this year I'm gonna start with it. It was not planned during Corona time where I was coming out with my debut album, but now it's starting, and I will have my first concert in July in Germany, mid of Germany, in the middle Hessen, Marburg, and in September, end of September, a second concert in Reykjavik in Iceland. And this is what I'm preparing right now, full speed with doing videos to show in the background, and yeah, preparing how I can bring ʌltrə to life. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you play live, it's like, one of the things what I do with like all my stuff, you see all my synthesizers, is I'm kind of very old school. I got a lot of hardware, and then I try to link it to visual. And it's a lot of modular hardware, Moogs and Roland actual physical keyboards, but then tie them to the video. So
Mhm.
tie it so the rhythms and stuff get triggered, and it's a lot of like kind of psychedelic, kind of like Warhol inspired stuff because I'm very much into what he was doing. And I'm not trying to do exactly what he did, but it's very kind of like psychedelic, very 70s kind of vibe. I'm a child of the 70s, so I'm kind of channeling that. And I don't see that as much anymore. So I'm kind of that's what I like to do is to have that. But I've actually even written plays like rock operas. And then the idea if you at some point was like, well, maybe I could have some actors kind of play that on stage and do like acting with the music behind it. And it's a big effort. I haven't been able to do it. It's in my plan book, but
Mhm.
like,
I think the connection is lost. I cannot hear you anymore.
okay, on my back.
Now,
So
now you're back.
okay. Yeah, what I was just saying is like you're so wide open to kind of visual arts, performance art, theater. If you think about like I'm always mentioning Bowie and Eno, it's like
Mm,
Bowie was very theatrical and a lot of stuff, and then very experimental. If you go into like a lot of like the low period when he was in Berlin with it's very experimental. Very the videos he did, the work he did is like Berlin albums. It's like wow, and so you can kind of go out there and just be where your head's at. And yeah, I think it would be cool to see what you're going to do because I like the approach in the video, and so I wondered, are you trying to maybe I don't know if you can tell people what how you're going to approach it?
for now, it's planned to have a long video, also parts of stuff I already did. So this is something underlaying my music, what I'm then playing. And as my second album is also out at that time, it will come on the 23rd of
Okay,
June. So just a couple of days left. And so a mixture of both albums. And yeah, then I'm performing the music and the video in the background. So this is the plan for now. Maybe in the future, when I have more time to really think about choreography, it will also start with a little bit of Butoh I would like to add. And this is this, yeah, how to describe Butoh. It's a dance of darkness, something
oh, so
like
you
that.
have
And
dancers, you have dancers kind of acting out the music in some
yes,
way. That's
so
cool.
this would also underline my music. So together with the music, just having this movements. So in some of my videos, you can see some Butoh movements. So
That's
it's
cool.
already part of my music. Yes.
Yeah, it's just interesting. So your new album is that called pronounced ZWEI or ZWEI is ZWEI? That's your
Yes,
next album,
it's
right?
ZWEI, German
ZWEI?
for
ZWEI.
two, as it's my second album.
Oh, so that means
So
2.
the first one was EINS, it's one, and
Mm.
yeah, the second, of course, is ZWEI.
That's cool. Kinda reminds me like Peter Gabriel used to do these albums where he just had it was just called Peter Gabriel, and it would just have a different photo.
Yeah, nice.
He'd just do the same name,
Yeah,
but then a different photo. It was interesting, but he like kinda like a 1. He's like so they call used to call it like Peter Gabriel 1, 2, 3, 4 until he got the "so," and then he actually gave it a name. But each one was
yes.
kinda like, "Well, this is 1, this is 2, this is 3."
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but, yeah, it's interesting, what you can do with music and how it really, cathartic. I just can't I keep on mentioning that, but I think when you come from the place that you're doing it because you love it, and it's kinda like your therapy, it feels really honest. Like, when I deal with I talk to a lot of singer-songwriters or songwriters, and I've always kinda liked to talk to the person that actually wrote the song.
Mhm.
Because, like, you can talk to people where they kinda like, well, yeah, they're a singer, but they got, like, 5 other people that wrote the song, right? That they didn't really write the song. And I always find I like talking to the creative person that actually kinda owns their whole project. And I like the idea because then you get this unique world. It's like when you read a book, you have an author, like, they had created this world,
Mm.
right? When you read a book and the author created it, that's their own vision. So when you deal with somebody who's a producer, singer, songwriter, and so it's their piece, it's their project. It is what I prefer to talk to people who have that mindset because then you get this vision that you don't see all the time.
Yeah, for sure. Now the connection's lost again.
Yeah, I'm back.
Now,
Back.
yeah.
Sorry. But yeah, I don't know if there's a pun internationally with the line, but yeah, it's just interesting that I was able to bring your music to the world. I really like the video. I think it's probably
Thank you.
like you said, you don't know like it doesn't you wouldn't say that video is totally representative of your sound, or you would say that it is somewhat representative of what you do, right?
Yeah, I think
The
it's
video.
representative in this combination, having video art and music, and
Okay, cool.
yeah, I think the combination.
Yeah, because I really dig it, and I can't wait. So what's the release day of the number 2 album?
It's the 23rd of June.
23rd.
And yeah,
Oh,
as
that's
I'm a
cool.
bit
So
old
it's this
school, I
month.
also always put physical stuff in my
Oh,
merch. So this is the second. I already have it here in my
oh,
hands.
that's the album. That how do people get that? If they go to your website, they can get that?
Yes, it's when you go to my website, there are all these links where you can find my music, like Bandcamp, for example. There you can buy physical stuff, and
And they do
on
international
Instagram.
shipping? People, like, in the US, if they buy it on Bandcamp, they can get it in the US?
Yes, it's possible.
Yeah,
Everywhere around the world, you can get my CD.
that's
And of
cool.
course, digital. Yeah.
That's awesome. So if you go to ʌltrə official.de/en, you can get to that link for Bandcamp. You can get to where you can buy the albums.
Yes.
Yeah. So for our people who are on the audio, if you go to https ʌltrəofficial.de/en, you can click on that and then get into the world of ʌltrə, order the album, get the merch. So when you say merch, do you have like T-shirts and stuff or posters?
It's planned, and what I just received by today is music sheets. The piece what I did on the piano. It's
Oh,
printed, and you can buy it.
oh,
Yeah,
wow.
as soon
That's
as it
cool.
is released. This is also on Bandcamp and on ʌltrəofficial.de. You can find the link. Yes.
So are you doing CDs and vinyl and tape, or CD? Because people today, they do thumb drives, they do tape, they do vinyl.
Yes. Yeah.
What formats are your albums available in?
It's a CD, as I grew up with CDs, even though you can see it in the background, I'm also playing with vinyl.
Vinyl. Yeah.
But it is a CD where you can get ʌltrə.
That's cool. I think the physical work for musicians, I find that when people just deal with digital, and I know everybody's dealing with digital because of their phones, but when you have like a piece of art, like the cover and maybe a lyric sheet or like a fold out poster or something, I think the connection with the physical. Now, like I said, I'm a child of the 70s. So I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin on vinyl, right? Or Pink Floyd on vinyl. And one of the also things I liked about it was when I would put my, needle down on a record, I didn't skip around. I would listen to the whole Pink Floyd album. And the
Yes.
problem I think sometimes today with modern music is it's all playlisted and you don't actually get to dive into an individual artist. But if you buy the CD, you're more likely to listen to the whole thing.
Yes.
And then I think sometimes people don't give artists enough attention because they're so distracted by the world with all these different things like TikTok, and you're getting chats or people are pinging you. And so back in the 70s, you didn't have those computers, didn't have those cell phones. So you only had 4 channels of TV. So you would listen to an artist all the way through.
Yes.
If you got a 8 track or a tape, you could actually listen to the whole work. So I just encourage people, if you when you go to your website and you get the record, give ʌltrə a full listen. And I say that for every band I talk to, because a lot of times the single or the video is not totally representative of everything that artist can do. And if you
Exactly.
don't, it's like reading the cliff notes. You don't, when you just read the cliff notes on a novel, do you actually go read the novel?
Yeah, I think it's also important just to have the whole concept and listening to the whole concept.
Yeah, because a lot of times you don't get the full picture of an artist, and you might actually, have a misrepresentation of the artist by the one song that's out there. Doesn't actually show you who they fully are. Um, and being a promoter of independent and emerging creators, that's what I do with this show. I do encourage people to, you know, every week go listen to a new record. Listen to ʌltrə. I'm talking about ʌltrə right now, but every week when I present somebody, like, go and actually listen, because people tend to keep on listening to the same thing because it's
Yes.
maybe it feels good to keep on something that's familiar, but in order to get to the next place, listen to new people, listen to different people. So I do encourage people to do that, and I think you'll find that you open up your horizons, you get different points of view, you get to hear things you never heard before. And I thank you again for being on the program. It was really
Thank you.
cool, and I hope people
Thank
will
you for the invitation.
come to you, and in the future, if you want to promote. And I know your new album's coming out, so in the future, if you want to talk after your tour, maybe come back on the show, we can set something up.
Thank you. Nice.
Thank you again for being on the show. It's Fam Electric Ghost. Check out ʌltrəofficial.de, and have a great rest of the day.
For you too. Thank you.